My name is Jim Barker and I'm the Heritage and Legacy Specialist at Atlassian Williams Racing.
Frank Williams' love affair with Formula One started in 1969. In addition to his magnificent engineering facility at Didcot, he has built a motorsport museum that proudly contains every one of his Formula One cars.
The Heritage Collection is our wonderful celebration of our cars from our past leading up towards our present. We have a select collection in here highlighting our championship years and also major rule changes over the years. I believe it's truly important. You know, we look at the reaction that these cars generate with our fans when we do dynamic activations with them. We go to places like Goodwood Festival of Speed and Silverstone Festival and other events.
I've got the FW40V behind me. It's such an iconic car from our sport.
We also generate huge amounts of revenue by offering these cars to private ownership. We look after the running of these cars anywhere in the world. We look after the service and restoration, continual maintenance of them, but also finding cars that have been lying dormant for up to 30, 40 years, finding original engine supplies for them and turning them back into running cars. We're unlikely to need it. We recently built an FW11 from 1986 for Honda. There wasn't any one of us that were here in 1986, so none of us had worked on one of these cars before. But because we keep all of the original drawings, all of the original design information and engineers' notes for those cars, we have every handwritten note covering all of our cars from nearly a 50-year range. We look at our archive, we dig into the information that we've had from back in period, and using the skill that we've got in the Heritage Workshop, we can get these cars back together running and into service life again. And whenever we do that, we realise that as static museum pieces, they're wonderful. I myself never get tired of looking at them, but we see that when they turned into a dynamic display piece, we run them on track, people hear those screaming, howling V10s and V8s from a bygone era. That it truly has an incredibly significant impact on people, and the response we get from it is truly outstanding. You know, people come up to us and say, that's the car I had as a poster on my wall when I was a kid, and to see it here running all of these years later is truly fantastic. But we're celebrating one of the most successful Formula One teams in the 75-year history of Formula One, and I personally believe it's very, very important. One of the most fantastic challenges of working in Heritage is working on a huge, diverse array of cars. Cars from the early 80s, late 70s were our Cosworth DFE engine cars. They ran a very conventional gearbox that most teams in Formula One used. As we get more and more advanced, we start to see that more of the car was designed in-house by Williams, but they're all incredibly complicated. These cars were designed to be raced for 1 year and 1 year only. There was never any thought given in 1978 that almost 50 years later we would be still running these cars. And really, because of the dynamic and fast-paced world that Formula One is, as soon as you finish with the old car, all you really care about is the next one. No one ever really thought, we would build these cars, we would, make sure that they're presented well, but really they were only there to be used as a static museum piece. And here we are all these many years, 20, 30 years later, trying to turn them back into running cars. It's a huge challenge. I'm very, very lucky to have the most amazing array of talent within the Heritage technician group. We have over 150 years of combined expertise on Williams and Formula One cars within our small group. And it takes that level of experience to build these cars. 2005 was a bit of a golden era of Formula One, the last of the V10s. The cars were absolute rocket ships. And if we put modern drivers in those cars, they are all pretty much speechless about the performance that car offers. Those cars were very, very special and very, very fast. But then you look back to our ground effect cars of the early 80s, they also offered huge amounts of performance because the ground effect concept was so phenomenal. It generates huge amounts of downforce for very little drag. Normally when you put a bigger wing on a car, you gain more downforce, but you also gain more drag. But certainly there are cars, standout cars, our turbo car from '86 was developing upwards of 1200 brake horsepower in qualifying. We don't have those levels of power anymore, but really that engine was probably only good for 3 laps, not the sort of 6 or 8 races that a modern engine has to do. So it's hard to compare them, but there are certain standout periods in Formula One. We know that the groove tyres of 1998 through to 2008 slowed the cars down because they didn't have as much, rubber contact to the ground. But there are certain eras, and the 2005 cars are, very, very quick cars for sure. Favourite car is probably one of my hardest ones to answer, but I think I have to go for an FW14. So my first car is FW14, the 1991 car, and we have in here FW1403, which is the car that won the 1991 Mexican Grand Prix with Ricardo Patrese driving it. That was my first win. It was the first time I ever won as a team member of a Formula One team. And I think that's my car. There are some beautiful other cars. I sort of have a top 3, which is a bit easier. So my top 3 is a 14 FW25, which was my last year on the race team and an absolutely phenomenal car. But I've got a real soft spot for our FW08B, which is the 6-wheeler, a car that I worked on as part of the sub-assembly team. So I did some servicing work on that car, so I'm very proud to say I worked on it. It was much before my time as a Williams employee, but it was a phenomenal piece of design, a true example of how Williams is capable of outthinking rivals and also thinking outside the box to come up with something genuinely unique. So I think the 6-wheeler is also there in my top 3. So they're my cars, and if I was ever to take 3 home, those would be the 3 I'd take home, I think. Really, the collection is a wonderful thing to be able to offer to partners, but also we do a huge amount with schools and STEM. We have 2 schools here every single day to come through, as hopefully we inspire future generations of engineers in the coming years. I probably walk through here most days and it still has the same effect on me. There are times when it genuinely makes the hairs on my arms stand up, and it's emotional. I've given a huge part of my life to this company and I had some of the most amazing successes with it, and shared with my teammates some of the most truly amazing things that I think is possible, really. I've travelled the world with this company. We've won world championships, we've lost world championships, and it's hard not to look at the cars and the team that was with those cars at the time, and some of those people are sadly no longer with us, but I find it very emotive, and sometimes you turn the lights off in here and it is quite an eerie place to be, but it's an amazing place and I genuinely never tire of walking through here.